Hello everyone, welcome back to the third and final video series on this news bulletin for July 27th, 2010. I am Darko, and we just left off with this InfoWars article where we're just talking about CIA funding the ISI, Pakistani intelligence, and then ISI funding Taliban and Al-Qaeda. I just finished up here saying how some of this information, these quotes from above about accusing the Pakistani intelligence of arming, training, and financing the Taliban since 2004 comes from these junior officers, and it prompts senior officers saying that it's basically bullshit and rumors. But it says, however, it has been common knowledge for years that the ISI created the Taliban and Al-Qaeda as we know them, acting in its capacity as direct front for the U.S. intelligence. Before 9/11, Pakistan worked directly with the CIA to create the Taliban in Afghanistan. Sadiq Harrison from the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars stated, quote, "The CIA made a historic mistake in encouraging Islamic groups from all over the world to come to Afghanistan. The U.S. provided $3 billion for building up these Islamic groups, and it accepted Pakistan's demand that they should decide how this money should be spent. Says the old associations between the intelligence agencies continue. The CIA has close links with the ISI, Pakistani's inner service intelligence. Also says today that money and those weapons have helped build up the Taliban. Harrison said the Taliban are not just recruits from madrasas, Muslim theological schools, but are also on the payroll of ISI. And it's also been known that these madrasas have been funded by the intelligence agencies as well to radicalize regular Muslims in order to create a threat, in order to create an enemy. It's either terrorism, it's people who want to be sovereign individuals, right, and aren't for globalism and that. They call them terrorists. And then there's this new thing called eco-terrorism, or terrorism crimes and carbon crimes, eco-crimes, whatever. And that's the new type of terrorism, where it's the human is now, just humans in general are the enemy in order to save the environment, so you can declare war on the human. But it says Harrison confirmed that the creation of the Taliban had been, quote, actively encouraged by the ISI and the CIA, and the Pakistan had been building up Afghan collaborators who would sustain Pakistan. Al-Qaeda was a joint CIA-ISI intelligence database of Mujahideen fighters they had recruited in the late 70s and 80s to fight the Soviet Union. It was later revealed via declassified Defense Intelligence Agency documents of 2001 that the DIA was aware that the ISI was sponsoring the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda, but the Bush administration chose to ignore those findings. And so this is kind of an important little part of this, and I'm going to move on to finish up this video with other news articles. But it says, no surprise, in 2003 when these politicians, Mr. Lugar and Mr. Vice President Jr. Biden, now Vice President, okay, yeah, went on record to state that Pakistan's ISI was sheltering Taliban fighters along the border. See, if Pakistan, if we're working with Pakistan's intelligence, if we're funding the Taliban, if we're funding Pakistan, and Pakistan is funding and helping Taliban and Al-Qaeda, then you see how this all works. It's like money laundering. It's like the big banks that just got caught, all the big commercial banks that got caught money laundering for basically Mexican drug smugglers. And yeah, it is. It's pretty well known that that's what they do. They're aware that people are laundering money for drugs, and that's okay because they make their money. When they get caught, they say, "Ooh, sorry. Yeah, we didn't know that there was fraud going on." When they get caught and whatever, then you know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing as like money laundering with the bankers and the drugs. They're laundering terrorism. They're laundering enemies. Even more important, the senators told the New York Times that there was evidence that ISI might be helping the Taliban and Al-Qaeda operatives along the border to infiltrate into Afghanistan. And it said that in 2005, CIA officer Sharon who spearheaded the search for bin Laden, stated that ISI officials are very well aware of the whereabouts of the leadership of Al-Qaeda, including bin Laden himself. He said that regardless of how much reward money American officers bin Laden would not be captured and handed in, because the leadership of Pakistan, including Musharraf, are afraid of the internal political consequences, so they have no motivation to even catch him. It says, and the rest of this article pretty much, goes on and says, the missing link came when it revealed that the head of the ISI was a principal financier of the 9/11 hijackers. And it says, in various terror attacks, alerts, and foiled plots since 9/11, further links between Al-Qaeda, the ISI, and U.S. British intelligence have emerged. And it basically, yeah, like I said, it goes down and it talks about how basically, the U.S. is funding, or not funding, but the U.S. is paying Taliban not to attack their men, while the NATO and the UN and that foreign troops, have basically get fired at because they don't pay the Taliban. So that's another thing. I'm not going to go into detail because I just don't have the time, but this title is Wikileaks Docs Target Pakistan, and I'd recommend you go check out these videos. Afghan bombshell, Wikileaks war diary exposes, and it says, treated headline, not long after WikiLeaks dumped tens of thousands of classified Afghanistan war documents into the public arena for consumption, the corporate media zoomed in on Pakistan. WikiLeaks document released Sunday shine a spotlight on Pakistan's ISI, a spy agency that has been accused for years of having links to terrorist groups, writes the Wall Street Journal. And says demonizing Pakistan and Gaul play right into the Pentagon script as the puppet Barry Obama expands the war in Afghanistan and sends drones armed with Hellfire missiles into Pakistan's tribal areas to kill a never-ending cast of intelligence-created bad guys. Well said. So, yeah, you should check out this. I'm going to post a link. And stick with me here. We're going to blitz through these. Air Force wants drones to sense other planes' intent. So they want these unmanned drones to be able to recognize other aircraft and land by themselves. And just like the military-industrial complex goes, it says here, FedEx is starting to think about an air fleet of linked-up drones that can fly in information at the direction of a piloted aircraft. Disciplinary proceedings follow last year's G20 death. The officer who pushed a man that later died at the last year's G20 protests in London, England, will face disciplinary proceedings for gross misconduct. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Paul Stevenson said Tuesday public prosecutors announced last week that they would not file charges against the officer who had not been named publicly. So I guess the guy was let go. And yeah, this is tyranny. Welcome. For all you 9/11 truthers and anyone who's aware that the government is capable of attacking or allowing their own people to be attacked, today, or yesterday, 7/26/2010, NORAD, our North American Aerospace Defense Command, the same command that stepped down on 9/11, plans Washington exercise. So right before 9/11, these guys were planning an exercise where when 9/11 actually happened and the planes hit the buildings, they said, oh, is this an exercise? Is this an exercise? What do we do? Because they were standing down. They didn't know what to do. So we'll see what happens. As the exercise will take place between tonight at 2 a.m. Tuesday and Wednesday. So helicopters and that. So these exercises have been conducted throughout the U.S. and Canada since the start of Operation Noble Eagle, the command's response to the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2011. So whenever there's a false flag terrorist attack, there's always an exercise prior to that. This article, police activists prepare days ahead of Arizona law. It says the sheriff of Arizona's most populous county is making room in the vast outdoor jail and determined to round up illegal immigrants to fill it. Police from the U.S.-Mexican border to the Grand Canyon are getting last-minute training, and protests and marches are planned throughout Phoenix. So this is right before that law goes into effect. And it says police find 8 severed heads in northern Mexico. There was people found bodies hanging, and there's been the first car explosion bomb recently. So that's all real good stuff that's going on down there. Great, great, great country. For our Sheeple News segment, we have Sandra Bullock and Jesse James will not be getting back together for good. And Harrow to be united with soldier he saved. So here you go, nice little cute puppy dogs. Hopefully that will raise your spirits. Thank you.